Today, June 1st, 2025, the first full draft of the novella is out of my hands and into the hands of my trusted first round of readers. Sorry, there's a tick on my thigh, I think. Yep. I'm in the hammock in between two trees in the middle of the woods on my family's property. And there are cicadas. I've been trying out talking to nature again because I've been reading Michelle Wright's memoir, Pivot, and she's describing talking directly out loud with nature. And I used to do that, and I used to see what seemed like responses. And somehow I stopped thinking that I was seeing any responses, or I doubted what the responses were. Anyway, I'm trying it again because what do I have to lose? Today I talked to the nature at the farm, and some of the requests have not necessarily materialized, but they were kind of more open-ended. And two very specific ones were that I wanted the bugs that were flying around my head to please clear and give me space. And they have. And then I asked for the ticks not to crawl on me, which I think there were already some on me when I asked that. So I've removed those. And now, maybe to be funny, there was one on my phone. I guess that's not technically me. When I finished the work yesterday, preparing the draft to go out, it was just me alone, and I leaned over so I could see myself in the mirror across the room, and I said, "You did it." And then I burst into tears. And that isn't how I thought the finish line would happen. Or at least I didn't think that's how it would feel. I thought it would feel a lot more like a celebration, but that's just not where I am right now. It felt a lot more like a hollow ache or emptiness. Or like collapsing at a finish line and no one even knows you are done with the race. Or that you were racing. Writing is always an incredibly solitary project, but it isn't always lonely. And when it is such a resounding, echoing activity. You come out of a world that felt so vivid while you were in it, back into the one that is, at the moment, kind of surreal. And you're not sure if it's going to matter to anyone else, but it mattered to you enough to make it. Yeah. It's a different thing to be the writer of the work rather than the reader. I'm reading it as I write, but I don't think I'll return and keep reading it. So my time with it has come to a close. I can drop into the world and imagine new angles, but I don't necessarily want to read or repeat the lines and the story I've already told. So even though it's a place that I really loved being, it is time to move on. And thankfully, there's a whole world, even larger than what I made in this one, to move on to. I watched a video this morning on one of my favorite YouTube channels about a day in the life of Thomas Andrews, the designer, builder, whatever, of Titanic. And it discussed how he on the ships that he would build. He would go along on the maiden voyage and walk through all the parts of the ship. Like, other people who were employed or part of the ship belonged to certain areas or only in designated spots. But he went all through it with his notebook, making notes for the next ship, what he would change, what was working well, what wasn't, where there needed to be more space, where there was a door that wasn't being used. And that's such a vivid picture of what it is to edit a manuscript or to build a story. And this last couple of weeks has not been so much writing of it. The writing was complete several weeks ago. But going through and deleting doors or adding them or moving tables around and trying to accommodate the people who will be within the ship. This metaphor breaks down if you think about the ship that I'm describing, because I'm not trying to invite people into the Titanic or have it sink on them. Just think of shipbuilders. It doesn't have to be the Titanic. Just think of a ship. It only feels like the Titanic because everything feels like it's coming to an end, but that's just a little bit inside my own brain and body and heart, and that's just today. I keep thinking of the word culmination. Like, not an ending, but a culmination. And the word culmination comes from Latin. One of the origins means to crown. And ultimately it comes from the Latin culmen, which means top, peak, or summit. Which feels a lot more fitting than ending, because nothing that we say ends. There's always some way that it goes on. It just might look different. So I've finished writing this book, but the book isn't over. The book in some ways is beginning to be a book. I think the fear is that I know that I poured my heart out. And the fear is that it won't mean anything or do anything or change anything, which is almost like the feedback of there having been nothing that was done. Like, I threw a rock into water and there were no ripples, no reaction. And then if you feel like you've poured your heart out and it's empty and there's no reaction, then it feels like you wasted it. And where the ease comes is when you know that you can never pour and empty your heart. It always has an inner spring. And that there's no such thing as no effect. There just might be signs that are too subtle to see.